All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May 2024 edition of the Fresno Bitcoin and Cryptocurrency Investors Zoom. Today we are talking about decentralized physical infrastructure networks. And most of us probably don't know a whole lot about that, but that's why Tim is here. He's going to help us with that. We're going to try to keep it as non super techie as possible, just so we can all have learn the most about it, and without going super down the rabbit hole. If you guys have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, just jump in or type something in chat, and we will go from there. So Tim, take it away. Maybe start off with just a kind of a 30,000 foot overview of what we're talking about today.
Okay, so I have a kind of a strange resume that makes me think very differently than most people. And one of the most important things with all of the where we find ourselves today is to actually be able to not only embrace change, but to be able to get out in front of it, be able to find something that is at its infantile state and get into it at a point at the earliest, so you're buying it at the absolute bottom or maybe even before bottom, so that you can take and find those 10 and 100 and 1000x type of opportunities. But if you can't change your mental state of where you see technology, you're already in the middle of a tsunami of change. I happen to have worked for some very interesting people over the years in research and development, and a couple of those really enabled me to change how I thought about everything that's going on. As just a short analogy, if you know that at some point you're going to have self-driving cars, then somewhere in the middle of that, and especially if they're, quote, going to be electric, you need a source of voltage. You need a way to be able to recharge these things. Oh, you can put diesel generators everywhere all over California. Yeah, right. Okay, sure. Try to register a diesel car and see if that's going to work for you. But you also need sensors in the roads so that they could know where the cars were, because you can't just go from 0 to 100 without hitting 50 in the middle. So if you can plot yourself, if you know that these things are going to the required steps in that technology pattern, then you can actually implement yourself somewhere in the middle so that you're out, as Wayne Gretzky says, where the puck is going to be eventually. And so some of that, it all starts in your head. You have to be able to not only embrace change, you have to see it happening, expect what the steps are going to be, and be able to be there before the puck is even at the person that's going to put it up in front of you. Case in point, this is all really, in one respect, DePIN is the continuation of things that started back in the year 2000. It started with internet appliances, with companies like Infogear, who made the, quote, iPhone, which got bought by Cisco, which then Apple came out with the iPhone and started a lawsuit between them and blah, 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 blah. But this put devices onto the internet that weren't, quote, computers. And then it turned into smartphones. And now everything your toaster will be running, something on the internet, because it then went into the internet of appliances, to the internet of things. And then it continued, and it's still evolving. Let me pull up my notes real quick here.
Yeah, and if you want to share your screen, you can do that too.
Well, the notes kind of aren't going to be super useful, but I do have some links up there, and I can make this shareable to everybody.
Yeah, all right. If you want to paste them into the
Yeah.
chat, I'll put them into the Google Doc.
Okay.
We have a Google Doc for each meeting, so we can put all the links and that kind of stuff in, so they're all in one spot after the meeting.
Okay, let's see. It's Splinter DePIN. Here we go. I'm gonna literally just do a wild copy and paste the whole thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna be discussing some things where I've already spoken about once or twice in the past at the meetup, to where everybody's been like, oh, how do I get in touch with that company and buy their stock? I will actually take and show you some places that you can do things such as that. But as I said, this really, and let's see, really is going chatting as a guest. Okay, got it. Audio is off. Hello, Brett. And okay, here we go. So this is just a verbal dump of everything that I've been going over prior to actually taking. Oh, says no, message is too long. Let me break that in half. So there's a lot of YouTube videos here that are getting referenced. And let's see. That looks to be about half. Control C, Control V. Boom. There's the first half. Now you want me to
Yeah.
do the first half and then we can go through a whole bunch and then I can copy the second half in?
Maybe just do the second one while we're thinking about it, so we don't forget, or if we get carried away, and then I'll put the whole thing into the Google Doc, and you can focus on sharing with us, and I'll focus on the links and everything like that.
Oh, 69 total. Nice. Good line count. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so, oops. Now let me blow that back up, take the full screen. And okay, so people have heard me talk a little bit about CS3, which is this insanely disruptive technology that is out today. And there is a company that you can actually invest into that's like an early stage investor. You don't have to be an accredited investor or anything to be able to take and buy into this. And this is just a singular instance that begins to show. Raoul Paul has this thing that he calls the theory of everything, and he calls this the exponential age. And this truly is the exponential age. Now, everybody's familiar with Moore's Law, and every 18 months, roughly, the processing power doubles and the transistor count has been doubling. And this has been going on for over 30 years now. And we have just watched it basically get stuffed into a shoebox, kind of. When you take and you look at the normal CPUs that have been for everything but about the last 5 years have been maybe 8 years, have been empowering everything. Now it's become the GPUs because they're just getting more specialized. And so in the 2000s or so, you saw movies start rendering everything on GPUs for Hollywood. And so it became all about these big, huge computing farms. that were just running massive, big, huge data banks of GPUs to render CGI frame by frame by frame. And the CS3, which stands for the Cerebras Wafer Scale Engine 3, just takes Moore's law and utterly destroys it. The number that I have heard is that if you were to take Moore's law and plot it out, NVIDIA still fits on that curve. And right now they are the premier stock in the industry insider to, if you can't beat them, you're not the next step on the evolutionary chain of computing. And these things have about 80 billion transistors in the modern GPU, like the H100. These things are about $40,000 to $70,000 each. And what they've done with the H100 was to turn around and instead of having a single GPU, they took two of them, build a fabric interconnect layer in silicon, stick the two together and run them as one. They don't have to take and tax it quite as hard, which makes it save a small amount of power. But they're running about 80 billion transistors on this thing. The CS3 is using a 4, and this is with a T, trillion transistor count on a single engine. A normal GPU or CPU that you see in a, let's just say, desktop or server size system is something about smaller than a trackpad that you see on a small laptop type of thing. That's a huge, huge IC. The Cerberus wafer scale engine 3 is 300 millimeters by 300 millimeters. It's a foot square. It has 4 trillion transistor count. It is about 90,000 cores. We don't have anything that is even evolutionary in between where the H100 is and what this is. And this thing, because of the way that they've designed it, by getting kind of out and understanding where change is, they have literally built in an error correction type of code that if they find any imperfections inside of anything, because normally, like with the H100s, the yield is a good yield would be anything over 70%. A bad yield would be somewhere around 60, which means you're tossing 40 to 30% of whatever you take and you produce. With these CS3, the wafer scale, yield is 100%. They don't have any that they're not able to actually take and utilize. And that's because of what they're doing in the background. They will literally map out all of the 90,000 cores in this thing. And if it finds a core that's bad, it just routes around it. And it has so much redundancy sitting in there that it's got everything that it needs for itself. It's sitting on 44 gigs of in-chip memory, has 125 petaflops of AI compute. This is not something you're going to take and play Call of Duty on.
Yeah, so bring it down to our level a little bit. Where does this fit in, and how are we going to use this? So is this like we're going to be able to plug into that power,
Well,
like they were doing the rendering kind of thing?
Where it's being used right now, or its quote sweet spot, is for AI learning. When they take and they do AI learning, well, AI is literally going to affect blockchain in huge ways. But one of the things that has to happen, or is happening, is this going from AI to AGI, artificial intelligence, to artificial general intelligence. And then somewhere at the pinnacle of that is an event they call the singularity, where things just go off the chart and we don't have a way to extrapolate what happens from there. Because at this point, those devices will be so intelligent, they can not only take and think for themselves, they can answer questions that they have come up with themselves, and they can do so a trillion times a second. So at that point, there is no getting out in front of it. There's no way. We don't have the capacity. What this thing can do in 2 clock cycles would take humans 2 years to be able to take and do.
Yeah. Okay. So let's back up, at least in my mind, where we are with the
Well, hold on.
DePIN versus
Let
the
me take
centralized. Okay.
one more piece out there that kind of maybe ties those two things together. So Moore's law has pretty much been just this inevitable march up and towards the right. But it's been pretty much a straight line. It's linear. You can calculate where it will be in 10 years.
Right.
If we take NVIDIA right now and they take where CS3 is, and they put those on a map together, it will take NVIDIA another decade to be able to equal the computing power of what the CS3 is generating today.
Okay. So huge leap forward.
Just an insane, huge leap
Okay.
forward.
Okay.
That's hence why part of this that I'm talking about is disruptive technology.
Got
It
it.
gotta be able to take and understand where the puck is going, to be able to find a midpoint, to be able to put yourself.
To get there, right? When it gets there. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
You need to understand kind of where technology is headed to be able to take and do this. And some of this, there's some aspects of things that are coming out that are just bonkers. They're, but they're in their infantile state. There's groups that are experimenting on how to build computing structures with mushrooms, with mold, with fungi. And there's another theory called transpermia. Okay. All of these crazy things fit together in some respect, and they are DePIN. DePIN, it has a very wide breadth of things. It's decentralized physical infrastructure. The largest living item in the world is a mushroom that grows up in Oregon. It's like 200 miles large, and it's like a big brain. What happens when AI discovers that it can infect a mycelial mass and turn around and take over and have a brain that's 200 miles large?
Okay. So let's define DePIN for everyone just real quick to
Okay, well, I'm going to pull it back down to things that we can look at now in crypto. But I
okay.
needed to take and literally show you how big the balloon can be inflated so that you can actually take and try to plot a place inside of it. Because 80% of how do you find the 100x is understanding how big the balloon is going to be. And that's difficult with technologies that don't exist yet. You're trying to find things in an infantile state. So DePIN has several different narratives to it. And there are companies that you can turn around and invest in, like Linkto, linqto.com, enables you to take and actually invest in a whole lot of these things, like Cerebras as an instance. Okay. And so you can turn around and, put like, I think it's $5,000 as the minimum, and then assign it to various AI things that are coming out, and be able to take and actually have some exposure to the infrastructure of some of these things that are coming down the pike. And I think they have about 20 or 25 different funds that you can look at, different companies. And the one thing about all of this is in order to be able to take and understand DePIN, you have to be able to take and come up with a way to actually categorize the different elements of what's required. You need devices, right? You need, which consists of bandwidth. You need a compute layer, you need a storage layer, you need a rendering or like a GPU layer, you need radio, you need wireless. Sensors is probably the number one thing that's the easiest to see some of the things that are coming up. In terms of bandwidth or wireless, you have things like Helium Network. You have things like World Mobile Telecom. That is World Mobile Telecom, for anybody who's never heard of it, is a project that was being or is built on Cardano. And it is, they take these aerodrones and they've been putting them up in various places in Africa that have no telephone service whatsoever, and are instantly able to take and bring up like 100 square miles with complete cellular coverage. And so they'll turn around and have, and Starlink is essentially today the backbone for a lot of these things. So they'll bring up a Starlink and a van, and they'll take an aerodrone up to a couple thousand feet, and it's filled full of helium. They're not cheap. They cost a lot of money to put up, but they instantly turn around and serve a huge area with bandwidth. And then you turn around, now that you've brought bandwidth in, now you can bring in cell phones, you can debank, or excuse me, you can bank the unbanked, because for the first time, not only do they have access to the internet via a cell phone, they have access to telephony, which they haven't had ever. And with that, you turn around and you have some aspect of compute, you have some aspect of storage, not en masse. But there's all these different categories inside of DePIN that are basically the decentralized infrastructure. Okay. And so you turn around and you can drop in things like Arweave, which is another crypto that
Now I'm at the point where my asshole's so hairy, it gets stuck. The shit gets stuck in the thing.
What?
No problem, Jack. Just put me or not me.
Okay.
I have no idea what that one was,
He
but
said his asshole so hairy shit gets stuck in it?
I think that's what he said. So basically, Tim, so DePIN's, like you said, stuff like Helium, Filecoin, things that are connected to the real world.
like
is
ICP as an instance is one. ICP is an interesting one because of the fact it represents all the pieces in one crypto coin. But you turn around and you take and you have Filecoin is another one. Helium is one. World Mobile Token, Arweave, all of these things are providing various little single elements inside of all of the DePIN infrastructure. So if you can take a computer, break it down, and then pull the pieces out to separate locations, you can kind of think from a DePIN type of architecture. A computer has compute power. It turns around and it has logic, or if you want to call it even smart contracts, where you see something happen, it's like the if this then that type of logic. You can turn around and take and have storage like Filecoin or International File System, or interplanetary. It's interplanetary, I believe, right? But this is basically, it's not located in one physical area. It's completely decentralized. And in the case of IFS, it's not necessarily even confined just to Earth. And eventually, Elon has his way. We will have things out all over the place. One of the things I've kind of always had as one of the burning questions in the back of my head is, what would Star Trek be using as a currency? How do I mean, you can endlessly walk up and have caviar for lunch every day. I mean, it's coming out of a food replicator, it's nanotechnology. But is there some form of economy underlying these things? If you're going to build a Death Star, how do you pay your workers? you know and makes for some kind of interesting types of questions.
Yeah, Tim, back at our meeting when you were sharing this with a few of us individually, you talked about the sensors and
Right.
I forget the exact example, but that was a great illustration that kind of, when you explained it that way, it clicked for me, like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. And that, can you give us that example where all the sensors were used?
Well, probably the easiest one as an analogy is when you have self-driving cars. At some point before you have self-driving cars, you need to know what cars are on the road. So at that point, you need to be able to build sensors into the roadway. You need some way to be able to take and keep track of the cars that are part AI powered, and those that are just under human power, or no brain cars. Or at least not electronically, right? They're run by much slower biological systems, i.e. us. And so this is going to require something that currently doesn't exist. The closest to it is there was a viral computing thing that went out a couple years ago called solar frickin' roadways, that basically were these things that as people walked on them, they generated electricity, and they would be able to melt the snow off of the sidewalk and stupid things like this. But now if you take and you extrapolate that out to the highways, if you took and you had, this is an example of kind of, if you know where technology is going, you can find a way to be where the puck is going to be. I remember coming up with this just because I ran over a ladder on a highway. But it was kind of like, as I went over that thing, I says, well, what if that thing actually just generated electricity? What if it had a little RFID pack in it that read my tires and knew who had hit it last, because it was flattened out into the roadway? And this thing would basically be literally a highway made that could be rolled out almost like a Hot Wheel track, and have these little things that would sit inside of it. And every time you drove over one of these things, it would generate small amounts of electricity, just like a piezoelectric lighter would. And it would have an RFID pack in it that would turn around and read the individual car's ID, or one that has no ID, but it would be able to take and send that back into a network. And the roadways would literally know where all the cars were. And this kind of goes back to the old Rush Red Barchetta song, which was, something from my high school years. But this guy literally got way out in front of where technology was. At the time, I had no comprehension to be able to understand what he was talking about. Now it's evident that he was really thinking much farther ahead than we are. But you need sensors all over the place. You can think of oracles as being that element of sensors in the network. You can be doing something as simple as measuring the depth of a river at the output of a dam to be able to take and know when, floods are there. How much does the dam is holding back right now? How much is it releasing? What's the rainfall currently? All of these, quote, oracles are part of DePIN in some respect because they're providing the inputs, the sensors to this decentralized physical infrastructure. Everything from temperature, wind pressure, rainfall, the number of cars going past a given point during a day. All of these elements, the question is, how do you take these and actually find a way to not only take and get the data, the most important is how do you monetize it? And that's something that the cryptos will have to kind of get their head around. And depending on what the Oracle does, like in the case of Helium, which is wireless, you're basically taking and providing wireless to a large area. That's kind of easy, as people connect, they're basically paying pennies to be able to take and get bandwidth. In the case of compute, like the internet, ICP, you're able to take and make money because of the fact they're basically renting out computer time to you. In the case of IFS, the International File System, you're basically taking and putting things out onto the block like Arweave or IFS, and your data is up there on chain permanently. It, quote, becomes part of your permanent record. So some of these things are pretty easy to figure out kind of how to monetize. Others are a little harder to be able to take and figure out how they become monetized. But the bottom line is once you take that computer and you break it down into the compute layer, the bandwidth layer, the radio, the storage, the rendering, the memory side of it. When you take and you have all of these different little pieces, all the building blocks of what a computer are, and you're able to take and break those apart into different categories that are represented by other little blockchains, each one of these is going to compete to be able to take and see which one is the one that's implemented. Some of them will fail. So just like being decentralized, you want to do the same thing with your portfolio. You're probably going to invest in like 10 and 8 of them will fail. Maybe 2 of them make it. And I don't even think the failure rate is going to be that high. I think it'll probably be something like 40% will go away. 60% will work, but 20% to 15% will be the ones that literally just become the 1000Xs.
Is there any ones that we can get involved with now? I know we had talked about helium in the past, and I kind of felt like we got involved a little late on that one. You mentioned ICP. Is that one that, maybe?
ICP, I think, has an interesting story. World Mobile Token, I think, is really, really interesting, and it's got some things that have just happened. It's a project that is being built on Cardano, but it's also starting to go to other chains. And there are other things that are happening. I've been a big fan of Cardano for a number of reasons. One of the largest reason, though, is coming from research and development as a prototyper. I understand both how the internet was designed and how things like Linux have been implemented. And I look and I can see inside of Cardano the elements of exactly that. Most people who have known me for a long time, one of the things after knowing me for a while is they start hearing about Linux. I've been doing for over 25 years. And it literally was just reading a single paragraph that basically made me format my Windows machine that day. At the time, I was installing Windows in every language I could find. Not that I speak any languages other than Pig Latin. But it was one of these things where, my ex-wife spoke Cantonese and Mandarin and Japanese, and I still don't understand any of the character sets or anything. But I would have to take and set up computers for her so that she could type in these other languages. And so that turned around and took me down a little different path in terms of Windows than where most everybody else was going. I taught myself networking and all of this. But then I turned around and I read one sentence in about 1998 by a guy who wrote a bunch of the stuff for what they call Samba, Windows printer and file sharing, and they were interviewing him. This is before Red Hat had IPO'd even. And they were asking him, how is anybody going to make money with Linux? I mean, if you're giving it away for free, what's the business model? How do they stay around? And he says, well, I don't know what the business model is really going to look like. But one thing I know is this: it's really hard to compete against free. And I read that and I was just like, holy shit. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, and obviously there's been some companies that have done okay since then, like you mentioned, Red Hat. On the World Mobile Coin, give us a little, couple sentence rundown on what that project is about, what they're actually doing.
What they're doing is they're basically providing bandwidth to areas, telephony to areas that have never had any form of internet connectivity or telephony in any way. So this is something that there's a couple different ways they can implement this. One is with drones. Drones can't stay up forever and they got to be electrically charged. But you could turn around and have a rotating bank of, say, 5 drones that could go up over a disaster area.
Right.
You name the disaster, we see all of them every day now, currently almost, it seems like. But you choose a disaster site that literally, let's say via earthquake, like Haiti, as an example, or New Zealand, where here's your 3 days of darkness. There's no internet, there's telephony, so emergency services aren't able to take and actually get in there and do anything. So they can turn around and take these drones and a Starlink and a solar panel system, go into an area, get the telephony going up in that area and provide everything for, 1 million people.
Right. Okay. And what percentage of the market do they have? Or, I mean, did they just start? Have they been doing this for 5 years?
They've been doing this for about 5 years. They
Okay.
brought up a bunch of areas inside of Africa, and they're actually now starting to even come into rural America. And you can go download this quote scanning app on Android that enables you to make some quote tokens, just like helium does in some respect, by being able to take and kind of map out cellular coverage. You're able to take and help build and fill the gaps of World Mobile for it to know where there is no telephony whatsoever. And
Okay.
so by finding these dead zones, they can find areas with large enough population centers to be able to come in, bring up either drones for a short emergency type of time period, or spend a little more time and bring up one of these aerodromes. Kind of think of them as like small blimps with a payload package on it that go up and stay up for like a couple months at a time. They're powered by helium. They cost a fair amount to put up. But if you're able to take and serve an area that's got like 2.5 million people, it probably pays for a little bit of helium.
There you go. There you go. So is it too late to get in on that token as far as the big moves?
It's probably not gonna. It's still very early. It's still very early. And
Okay. Okay.
the question really is, where are you going to deploy it? Some areas, I mean, how are people? What are people going to pay in the Amazon that have no access to telephony in that area? But they're probably not part of any monetary system either. How are you going to?
Good point.
It's
Yeah,
a
you almost need to bring that to them as well. Otherwise, you can't get
and,
paid.
and then you got things like Cardano, which is about banking the unbanked.
Yeah.
But it's probably a big stretch to go to, a tribal family living in the Amazon and go, all right, here's your cell phone. Your bill comes the 15th of every month. This is what crypto's all about. And how do we take and convert back over to your trinkets?
Exactly. Exactly. Hey, let's pause for a second, just see if anybody has any comments or questions. As far as what we've been talking about. Hey, Scott, I saw you join us too. Any comments from the great state of Idaho? We've got one of the Chris's from Washington, so we got the Pacific Northwest covered pretty well.
Yeah, well, this is Chris Troutner from Washington. Yeah, this is interesting info. I've been sort of dabbling in, I guess, DePIN stuff before the term was coined. So I'm working on a project very similar to Filecoin, except it's based on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. The data is anchored there, and but the files move over the IPFS network, similar to how Filecoin works. So yeah, this is interesting stuff. It's great to hear your guys's takes on these and hear how you guys are thinking about it. But I'm probably gonna have to go pretty soon. But if anybody wants to check some info out on that, it's in early development. It's not in an investment place right now, but I'm always looking for developers who are interested in blockchain and IPFS and decentralized technologies, and we really are creating decentralized infrastructure. That's really what it comes down to. I don't want to take too much time talking about this. People are interested in it, but yeah, this is good stuff. And if anybody wants to connect with me on that sort of stuff, I'll drop my contact info in the chat.
Perfect. And I just put mine in there too. If you want to hit me up or, come back in 6 months and share with us what you've been doing or, that kind of thing, or whenever makes sense.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us there. Anybody else? Questions, comments, ideas, maybe where this could be used, or maybe we've seen it. Go ahead, Scott.
Not gonna be installed, all that.
Brad, I was just going to make a comment that Cardano suffers from the fact that it programs in a unique language called Haskell. So development on Cardano has been stifled for a long time, and the efforts in the areas that Cardano works in are slow adoption process. So their coin appreciation hasn't been very stellar, and it's not projected to be real stellar anytime soon. So if you're interested in getting involved in something like Cardano, you should be looking at it on the medium to longer term. I've held a significant amount of Cardano for 2 years, and I'm pretty disappointed with how they've been able to push the ecosystem forward. Now, I get that they're doing a lot of stuff that's academic research and scientific development and blockchain and all of that, but it's not translating into price appreciation. So that was just one comment I had for that. IPFS and ICP are huge, but they don't necessarily have big short-term gains in their future. I see the rise of Filecoin, Sidecoin, and other kinds of physical storage, decentralized physical storage, as potential winners in the longer term. But when you look at the payouts and you look at the costs associated with something like AWS, you're competing with somebody who can store very large amounts of data at very, very low prices. So there's a lot of pressure on that. Now, things like ICP and Arweave and Akash, which give you access to compute power, can be useful if you have a need for compute power, but they aren't big payout kind of coins. You know, Arweave is essential. Filecoin is essential. IPFS is essential for things like NFTs, for data storage, for decentralized services. They're ideal fits because they're in Web3, but they're not appreciating in the short term or the midterm in any obvious way. Right now, it's meme coin season. You want to make money, you got to go to Solana and you got to go chase memes. And people are making millions there in days. And it's a little harder to play that game. But, you know, when you start looking at it, the more obvious and the more credit in the social world that you get from something like Pepe or ducks or cats or whatever it is that your meme is that you're looking at, these are indicators that there's a community there. So right now it's meme coin season, and if you're looking for quick gains, that's where you got to be.
Is there a chain that people are moving to from Cardano? Like you said, they're getting, you know, discouraged or
Well, one of the things I would like to bring up about that is Cardano has been written in Haskell for the main chain, but there are projects like Icon that basically open it up to Python and Rust and all these other programming languages. There are 100 different ways right now are basically being integrated via projects like Apex Fusion and things like this that are bringing a massive amount of development into Cardano that is just, it is such a research heavy thing that the people that have turned around and, you know, I mean, it's like, how would you like to be able to take and have a piece of TCP IP if there was a way to take and monetize that? When that came out, there was no concept of monetizing computers talking to each other, but that's kind of what blockchain is in essence. Cardano has been built via the scientific method. That's the same thing that happened with the internet. Cardano has been built by all these research and peer-reviewed papers, over 140 of them, by some of the absolute smartest people. That's exactly how Linux was done. Linux is running 85 to 90% of the internet right now. But when Linux came out, it was just a free operating system. Nobody understood, how do you make money from free? And the one thing is it's not, we don't know how you make money from free, but we know one thing: you can't compete against free. And so when the guardrails have already basically been built via the various blockchains that are out here, something like Solana that goes down for days or hours has gone down 12 times since it came out. Would you take and want that as the underpinning of your billion corporation.
Yeah, I think Scott was trying to jump in there. Go ahead, Scott. Did you have another comment?
Yeah, what I would say about that is the long and slow method is great, but the communities that are on Solana are the ones that are making the millions of dollars right now. And I recognize that it's a challenge to go after things like that. But the halting of the chain has been reduced dramatically. They haven't had a halt for more than a couple of hours in more than a year. The activity is frenetic. When you talk about things like implementing Python and Rust and whatnot, what you're talking about is adding accessibility to people who have no Web3 presence whatsoever. They're programmers that are not involved in crypto. They're not writing in EVM. They're not creating smart contracts. They're not knowledgeable, and they have a learning curve to go through. So if you're looking for fast gain and short-term opportunities, then ADA does not appear to be the place. Cardano is the slow market mover that may win in years and may not. It's similar to other plays that are courting large organizations and governments. They have a long game, and they're not looking at it in the way that the communities that are degenning in Web3 are looking at it. So all I was saying is, if you're looking at medium and short term, Cardano's not it. And if you're looking at it 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, then maybe it's a win. But so far, it has not attracted the vast majority of Web3 people, and it has not been attracting a lot of development in the way that is Web3 savvy, so it's not gaining price appreciation as a result of that. There's not high velocity of Cardano tokens. That's one of the biggest problems. So Solana halts and has security issues and is more centralized than I would like. I don't discount that at all. But when I go and get a Solana NFT and I pay $3 and I turn around and sell it for 300, I don't really care whether or not Solana halted. I care whether or not I was able to buy it and sell it.
Yeah, so maybe it's more whether our focus is short term or long term, that kind of thing. Sounds like what it comes down to.
Has, yeah, that absolutely has impact. You know, you have to NFA, DYOR, look, do your research, do things that you understand. If you don't understand how Pepe is going to become something or when it's going to go up and down, you either take the risk and ride it like a degen, or you walk away from it because you can't make a use case for it. That's fine. That's all well and good. You got to make your personal decision. But, you know, I know people that made $10 million on Pepe coin in the last 3 months. So, you know, Pepe has no use case. It's not a file service. It's not a DePIN. It's a meme. It's a joke. It's a social community that's having fun. And what you see about price appreciation in Web3 is it's about community, not about purpose. Not right now, anyway.
Yeah, so that really sounds like that's the complete opposite end of what Tim's talking about with this long-term stuff, which, I mean, there's room for both.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, obviously there's short-term, long-term, and some medium-term in there too. So good point.
Yeah,
good
I'm just
point.
saying you gotta decide where you want to be, right? If you're long-term and your horizon is 5 to 10 years from now, what's your best bet? It's probably Bitcoin and ETH. I mean, realistically, Solana's the big player in this market, in this bull market right now. Solana's the big winner. Solana went from sub $30 to $200, and now it's hovering around 140. So if you got in at sub $30 and it was over 120, you forex your money, and you did it in a few weeks. Now, this is the kind of thing that people in Web3 are after, is fast gains. And so a lot of people want to see their wallet go up. And if you want to see your wallet go up, then you have to understand what you're playing with and what the time horizon is. And so if your time horizon is long, then playing the more real plays like decentralized infrastructure in Africa is not a quick play. Just rolling Pepe over in 6 weeks for a 2x profit, that's in play right now. So you have to decide where you want to be and how much attention you want to pay and what you're willing to risk. If you're not willing to risk a lot, then you're going to be in the top 5 coins or the top 10 coins, and you're going to stop. That's just the way it's going to work.
Right, right.
Well, the one thing that I do want to put out there, since he mentioned it, is Ethereum. Ethereum is, I have every coin that we've spoken about, other than World Mobile Token right now. That's the only thing I don't have. I have a fair amount of ADA, I have a fair amount of Bitcoin, fair amount of Ethereum. I had a lot more Solana at one point. For me, I don't care to be somebody's exit liquidity. I see that right now it's mostly VCs that are pumping the narrative and keeping the balloon afloat. And at some point, once it's gotten up enough, they will all exit out. And I think that there's going to be very little left. You got a chain that still is going down, just went down for 12 plus hours less than a month ago, and has gone down 12 times. Cardano hasn't missed a clock cycle since the Genesis block. To me, the thing.
Yeah, but what's the difference? What's the difference in price in the last 6 months or 8 months? Because I'm sitting on Cardano, and to be frank, it ain't worth shit. It ain't moving. So I put $1,000 in and it's worth $1,200, and it's a year and a half later. Well, that's awesome, but that's not a win. Now I put Solana in and I made $400 in 3 weeks, and I walk away, and that's more than I made in Cardano in 2 years. So why am I interested in hanging on to Cardano?
I guess it depends when you get in. I mean, I bought a whole bunch at 20 in the 20 cents range, and
Yeah, so did I.
so
Yeah, but how long ago was that?
not long ago. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, like you said earlier, there's some stuff that we buy, or some of us, is for longer term, and like the Pepe stuff, shorter term. So, I
Of
mean,
course.
yeah. So that's what I'm doing, both long and short, long and short. So
I think you have to really take and kind of set your expectations, and maybe you want to take and actually think of it as having more than one basket. You can take and have your degen basket and be able to take and, see how many balls you can hold up in the air simultaneously. Or you can turn around and say, I'm floating this one, I'm going to put it up high, and I'm going to let it really go and ride. And knowing that it has been built in such a way that when you come back 5 years, 10 years later, it's still going, and other things have built onto it. And Cardano has consistently won the number of lines committed via GitHub every cycle, more times than anything else that's out there almost. My biggest
But that's not translating into price.
Price isn't.
Are you there to support Cardano, or are you there to make money on Cardano is the question. If you're there to make money on Cardano, there are other opportunities. If you're there to support Cardano, then support Cardano. But
I'm doing both. I've more than doubled my money on Cardano. And I'm staking, so I'm turning around and making decent on that. And Cardano has one of the lowest reward rates for staking rewards. It's not the hugest percentage of my staking rewards.
I understand. If you want to understand how you're doing against another coin, then you want to look at a chart against the other coin. So if you want to know how your Bitcoin is doing against your ETH, then you need to see a chart of Bitcoin versus ETH price. So the way to figure out whether or not Cardano is a good fit is to compare it to the other coins that you would trust to hold. And if you put an Ethereum and a Cardano chart together, you'll see why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Right. And I think today we're really talking more about the projects, these DePIN projects, more so than the coins themselves. I mean, we could spend an eternity talking about which coin versus which other 20,000 coins or
But a number of
coins.
these coins that we're talking about, Brad, are DePINs, right? Filecoin, ICP, Arweave. These are all DePIN. Sicoin, they're all DePIN. They're all decentralized infrastructure, right?
Right.
So
right.
if you're interested in being a decentralized infrastructure, then you're looking at a little bit of a longer game, and you're looking at potentially owning hardware if you want the best return. So, for example, if you wanted the best return in Filecoin, then you're going to go and set up your computer with extra hard drives, and you're going to provide file storage in order to get paid in Filecoin. That's
Right.
participating in DePIN, right?
Absolutely.
Now that's not gambling on Filecoin. That's participating in
that project.
providing decentralized infrastructure node.
Right.
I have, having literally heated my house with computers in the past, and the only person I can't say it I probably washed in terms of the amount of energy that I was using versus what my heating cost would have been. But the only person that guaranteed made money out of everything that I was doing, as I was basically running a knock down in my garage, was PG&E. And my goal was not to take and help somebody else make a lot of money. I am still looking at the fact that, as Gretzky says, don't go where the puck is, be where the puck is going to be. And I, it's like that is a very core part of being able to take and get out in front of technologies ahead of time. You can't get out in front of technologies ahead of time if you're thinking 2 weeks. If
Right.
that,
and that's what we're looking at today.
Yeah, that works great for DGen. And if you want to be all about dogs with hats, put that cap on and wear that puppy.
Yeah. Is there any other projects we should keep an eye on? Maybe that, that haven't been around as long or aren't as mature, so to
I
speak?
think if really what you want to do is to be able to take and just make money off of it, which I'm all about. Trust me, I've got my whole retirement plan is off in crypto right now.
Ooh, perfect.
I am looking at taking and being able to take and get into some of the stocks like Cerebras with the wafer scale engine. Anybody who can turn around and basically make a CPU, an actual, silicon single chip that is the size of a wafer and has a 0 defect rate in terms of what their yield is for every one they make. The numbers are irrefutable when they are 10 years ahead of Moore's law on day. So the one company that I is in the notes linked to Q, I should say, it's up towards the very top of what I posted, enables you actually take and see a lot of the different companies that are out there in the AI space. So you can turn around and get stock exposure to them. And that is not with a singular focus towards crypto, but, the potential to be able to take and probably have greater yields than where NVIDIA is. If NVIDIA is the darling of the industry, and here's a singular company that is a decade ahead of them on the curve and has a 0 defect rate in the yield of the chips that they're putting out, where everyone that they make is pre-sold, I'd have to say there's some pretty good growth potential right there. And that is, in my eyes at least, that is literally pulling the Wayne Gretzky move of being where the puck will be at some point. And they're talking about building computer farms of this thing where they're going to be building 2048 of these computer scale wafer engines. And just to be able to take and kind of understand what that means. When they take and they train an AI model from large language models, it takes a massive server farm, 30 days to be able to take and run across this large language model, to be able to take and generate a CSV file. But when they get all done, that thing can do just some insane, amazing things. It just takes it 30 days to be able to train it. The Watt Scale engine does it in 24 hours. One day. So it can go. What happens if you train that thing every 15 days? You're going to leapfrog anything and everything that's out there when you're already a decade ahead of where NVIDIA is.
Yeah.
So,
Are they a publicly held company yet, Cerberus?
not yet, but that's through that link to that I did there. You can turn around and invest money in them today.
Okay. Okay. Just so we have that. Yeah, I looked at their site as Cerberus.net and I didn't see investor info. Okay, so
And
that's what the link to is for.
if you look at their underlying technical spec, man, that's nosebleed type of territory. They're just doing insane levels on the technical spec side. There's nothing. NVIDIA won't be there for, like they say, a decade. And that's assuming, unless they absolutely change some aspect of how they work today. And they're probably just too large to be able to do that. It takes somebody who is not part of that world. You have to be able to take and think very differently. You almost can't worry about how anybody else is doing anything to be able to take and kind of compete against them.
Yeah, it sounds like they're clearly ahead. Is there any, Lino, you got any other projects in this space that I know you research, like crazy sometimes or all the times?
Yeah, the last one I bought was on the Solana network was Sloth. I just bought that a couple of weeks ago. They finally sent me my tokens. But yeah, on the DePIN stuff, I just have file in one other one. But I want to expand on the DePIN. That's why I joined this one today. I want to see what else was out there to buy or what projects were coming out. So,
Okay. Scott, you got any for us?
Hey, or you were talking about learning models and whatnot, and I would just say that the data set is more important than the model, because the data set that you train on is what's hard to come by, and that's the part that people covet and build. And I got to run off and do something, but I've been enjoying having a talk about this, but I just have to run soon.
Okay. No, thanks for joining us. For sure. Anybody else? Any ideas? The other Chris's. We've been inundated today with Chris's. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Brad. Glad to be here, learning a lot. That's why I'm really here, just learning about the new stuff that's out there. Like him, I've owned almost everything: Falcon, ICP, Arweave. I've owned Solana, but I'll tell you, I don't know, and this is not financial advice, and I've only been in this, it'll be, 2 days, it'll be 3 years. So actually kind of a baby in the space, but over those 3 years, I've learned a lot. And I'm sure that this is not what you guys want to hear, but I've actually just gave up everything and just bought Bitcoin. Because I'm a long term. I'm in it for the long term. I'm not in it for short term gains. I've learned a lot about myself over the last 3 years. Although I'm very interested in learning about stuff, I'm not going to put my money into something that's going to go to zero, because I think there's only 3 cryptocurrencies that have actually profited after the first year. And I'm not willing to roll the dice as I get older. I'm playing it safe, and I think Bitcoin's is where it's at. So thanks for all the information. I'm learning a lot from you guys, but that's where I am. Like I said, not financial advice, but the 3 years that I've bought all kinds of stuff, I just learned that I guess I by nature I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and that's just where I am.
Okay. No, great to hear. And I've kind of moved that way a little bit you know, it's fun and exciting, these little projects and this and that, but when 80% of them, you know, lose 90% of their value or something, like you said, after a year, 6 months or whatever, it's hard. And then you look at Bitcoin and just throw some in there. So,
Yep, exactly.
well, good. Because I think most of us are into it for the long term. We like the little pops of these new ones, and that's what's fun. There was a couple that I was able to get in a little bit early on, and I got a good pop, but I should have got out. And then I did one of them I got out of, and you know, basically walked away and with what I put into it. So that's always nice. But you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda sold more, you know,
Again,
earlier.
for
So
me though, I think what I've learned about myself over the last 3 years is that the 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 altcoins are good for like today and these gains today, and it's for me. But Bitcoin is really for generational wealth, and I don't buy Bitcoin for me. I buy it for my kids and their future, by the future of my family name, not necessarily just for me.
good. I'm glad to hear you're thinking that way too. That's always, yeah. Like you said, as we get older, our focus changes.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Any other comments? Looks like we lost a couple folks, but that's okay. Susan, did we blow your head or blow your mind today? Was really heady stuff.
Yes, this is really fun to hear about.
Yeah. Okay, Frank, any comments or thoughts? Okay. All right, maybe Tim, yeah, maybe kind of just summarize and wrap it up. Maybe give us anything else to look at and kind of go from there. I know you know you'll be at most of the in-person meetups. We can check with you as well. But anything else to leave us with?
Um, I'm all about making money. I pretty much I'm retired, so I don't work anymore. I've done my 20, 30 years out there in research and development. And I also really had my brain changed when I worked at Logitech because of sorry for the background noise here.
Yeah.
Turn around and was working inside of Logitech. I worked with the man who invented the computer mouse. I worked with the guy who invented the wheel on the mouse, and they stuck me in this project called The Office of the next 20 years. And that for me was a pivotal point where I understood what disruptive technologies were. And that enabled me to take and kind of think outside of my head in some respect, because the things that literally change humanity are the things that we never see coming. And it really does take and kind of take those disruptive technologies to make evolutionary gains. You know, otherwise we would still be connecting to the internet via copper phone lines. We wouldn't have things like Starlink. We'd be going from 56K modems to what? Maybe we would have a meg now, or be able to take and have Ethernet over the last mile. The bottom line is, once you can erase the distance, what's happening with cell phones now is like step one of having ESP on a planetary existence, where I can turn around and have a thought and put it into somebody's brain in Africa, in the middle of the Congo, on a world mobile aerodrome. And it's like ESP over that vast difference. And we can do that in a second now. I mean, that would look like magic around.
Right. Yeah, only a few decades ago. Yeah. Great point.
And one of the craziest, the one that I see that we're probably going to inevitably face, this is I love rabbit holes. First off, let me say that. I very much love rabbit holes. But the one that I find fascinating is we always, everybody keeps hearing about UFOs, and they recover these ships and they don't look like they're manufactured. And the one thing that they have said through different things is that they almost look like a live entity, like they're being grown. Well, what does that look like? That's a disruptive technology. And so you turn around and you take that and you extrapolate that back out. You're talking about things that are grown like fungi. I mean, that would be a disruptive technology. That's why I use the analogy of an AI discovering that mycelial mass could look like an empty brain to it. And they have gone through and mapped mushrooms out to where they think they can communicate with them. And they have figured out about 50 words, having come from farming and knowing an awful lot about plants and all of this type of stuff. There's something called the World Wide Web that is there for fungi. That's how plants communicate with each other, is through these mycelial masses that are under the earth. And do we see these historically? Well, what was manna that people were eating that got provided every night? When they woke up in the morning, there it was, their ability to talk to God the next day. And these quite likely were mushrooms.
Holy cow! You were right about the rabbit hole. Let's
That's
not
right.
go any further. Blowing my
Brad,
mind. Hey,
yeah.
go ahead, Lino. Any
So-
final thoughts?
Yeah, so if anyone has, I'm gonna hope everyone's on the Facebook group. So if anyone sees anything interesting, please post it there. I've been keeping my eye out there to see if anything was popping up. But that'd be great if anyone sees anything interesting. And
Yeah,
Chris,
I'm
Chris,
gonna
I feel
post
your
that in the
pain.
chat too. Thanks
Absolutely.
for reminding me.
And Chris, I feel your pain, but I haven't. I wish I was smart as Chris. I just keep going in. They go to zero, I keep buying in. So I'm a fool, I guess. But I have over 50 different tokens and coins that I've been buying, and I own.
Been there. I had 86,
Right?
but yeah, and I went down that rabbit hole, and then I started patching each one of them up, and it's going to be a tax thing, but you know what? I'm willing to take it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and I've been buying for a while. I don't know how many cycles. I started like in 2011, so I understand.
Nice.
So yeah, but I'm still going deep in all these different alts, because that's where really the money is all the alts. My top
Agreed.
are, Cardano, Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, and the rest is just, man, hopefully this bull run we hit something.
Yeah. Hey, Octavio, you jump back in. I think anything else to add or questions or anything?
No, I've been just listening to the whole thing. I was at the website. I don't know if I can pronounce this right. Cerbera, whatever the
Cerebras.net.
Cerberus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I had a moment to browse. I just been busy with work, but I wanted to hop in to see what else I could absorb, and so I'll look into the notes and keep doing research on my end.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right, everyone. We've got next month's meeting into talking about Facebook. I'm sorry. Let's see. Well, Facebook bloggers, YouTube bloggers, YouTubers, Twitterers in the crypto space, to kind of compare notes to see if there's anybody interesting that we're not following currently. So bring your favorite crypto folks, and we'll share those with each other, and hopefully can learn a little more from those folks. And in a couple of weeks, we've got the in-person again. We're kind of trying to get around Memorial Day. So this month, everything's kind of pushed a little bit forward. So I think that's in about 2 weeks. I hope to see as many of you out there as possible. With that, we will close, and have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Tim, thanks for joining us and doing that mind dump on us. And we'll pick your brain a little more in person at the in-person meetings, and go from there.
And I wanted to say thanks to Frank for his comment there of making Star Trek a reality.
There you go.
That is hilarious. That's like a badge of honor right there. So thank you, Frank.
Thanks,
Cool.
everybody.
Cool. All right, you guys, take care.
Bye.
Have a good rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.